Welcome, everybody, to the Beat Your Addiction podcast with, of course, John Giordano. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones, and, of course, we've got our guest with us as well, which we'll introduce in just one moment. But before we do, as always, we ask, please like this show, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Also, please don't be afraid to leave some comments if there's something you want to talk about, something you want to hear, or something you even disagree with. Please leave it in the comments. We read that stuff. It's very important we know what people think, right, John?
And not only that, this isn't what we talk about are things that most people don't talk about to help people with mental health, addiction, and other addictions. There's eating disorders, there's gambling addiction. We talk about all of this and also how to deal with life on life's terms. And our guest today is going to be an incredible guest, and you'll see.
Well, we've known Joe. This is Joe Kelley, and we've known Joe for a while. I've known him a little bit longer, I think, than you, but Joe's got a very interesting story. He's from the Boston area, so we're not going to hold that against him.
No, I won't hold
Just
it against
saying. I mean, he's a masked guy. You could hear it in his voice, but we're not going to hold it against him. Please don't judge him on that. I always give him a hard time. New York and Mass, it's just the fight we have. But yeah, guys, take it away.
Well, Joe, tell us about yourself. And, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of my heroes, that you came out of all of this destruction that you did to your life. Okay. And here you are helping God's kids and first responders. And take it away.
My background, originally from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The high end start of the story. I was a college athlete, full scholarship, football, baseball, got out. Worked for the Department of Children and Family, got my dream job of being on the police force. I saw a lot of things on the police force that, most people don't see in a lifetime. And I stuffed a lot of that stuff. They teach you in the police academy to give the help, not ask for the help. There's a stigma that comes with that. And on the job, going through the job, I buried a lot of things. That's why the divorce rate's very high within that profession as well. I lived in my uniform to provide for my family, but living in that uniform comes with a cost too, because of the things that we experience, the things we go through, and the things we're trained to how to be and how to act. And like I said, I didn't think any of that stuff was bothering me. And it started to come out in different behaviors in terms of not sleeping too well, being distant with people, surrounding myself with just law enforcement and first responders because I thought they got what I got. How could you get what I go through on a daily basis? One of the biggest things is as well as we communicate on the job, we don't communicate at all off the job. Because one of the biggest things is the suicide rate among first responders is skyrocketed lately. And most of the time, our last call is to a colleague or somebody else, because not to our wife, not to our kids, not to that family member, because we don't think that they can understand. And the truth of the matter is how could they understand? We don't communicate with them. It's not like we come home and share anything, because it's been ingrained to us that if we share stuff and become vulnerable, we're the authority figure, that it makes us weaker or makes us incapable of doing our job, which at the end of the day, we're human beings.
Men are taught that.
Yes.
Not to share their emotions, not to become vulnerable. And what I, talk about all the time is that that's what makes you powerful, to be able to share that. And the bottom line is our son is a police officer in Sunrise. My son-in-law he was a police officer in Hollywood. Then he went to Jupiter, and now he's in the school system as a police officer. And they all do the same thing. New police officers, they run in, they want the action, they do all this stuff. They don't trust anybody. They look, because you're always dealing with the lowest of the low. Very difficult. And then to want to get help is also very difficult, because you don't want it in your jacket, because then if something happens on the job, they're going to pull that out and say, well, look, he had problems with this and problems with that. Is that true?
Yeah, I'd always say this. I speak around the country to other police academies and law enforcement. I says it's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And those of you out there that are first responders will get this. It's a brotherhood or a sisterhood until promotion time. You know what I mean? And then all the knives come out because, you know, we work very hard to do what we do. We love what we do. But there's a price tag that comes for that. You know what I mean? There's a huge price tag that I found out. And, you know, stuffing all that stuff and keeping that stuff inside, I was injured on the job. And my, you know, mental health issues became now a self-medication issue, because when I was hurt on the job, they prescribed me that great thing back in 2009 that was not supposed to be addictive, the Oxycontin.
Oh, that's not addictive. Right.
No. And here's the thing, John, is like I took this medication to go back to work faster, because I was not one to ever sit on the couch. With my athletic background, I loved doing my job. I was always active within my community. But I took that medication and I found out very quickly that all that stuff that I was dealing with on the inside, you know, between the issues within my marriage at the time, the issues with the lieutenant at the time, all that stuff, the sleepless nights, I'm finally sleeping at night, I'm feeling better about myself. You know, this medication numbed all that stuff. It numbed it all.
Oh, it changes the brain.
Right.
What people out there don't understand, these drugs actually damage the brain, where it doesn't, the functionality of the brain is no longer the same anymore. And you look at life completely different, and it really gets bad.
Joe, you made a really good point. I just want to point out, a lot of people out there think that, you know, you're given an Oxycontin and you're like, oh yeah, party time.
Right.
You don't start out when you were taking that, like you said, your goal was to get back to work and heal.
Right.
You weren't thinking about addiction. You weren't thinking about getting high. That wasn't like the purposeful, I want to be messed up.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean,
at all. It was
A lot
right?
of people are like that, and a lot of people, what happens to them, their life gets destroyed. Okay. And they say, well, my doctor gave me it. Well, your doctor may have given you it, but what did you do with it?
Right.
Is a whole other story. And what that drug does to you is another story. So you wind up behind the 8 ball. And Joe, like what happened to you, wind up in jail.
Yeah.
But you also made that point that for a little while you felt like it was making your life better before it got destroyed.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And that's what the hook is.
Yes.
But at any point, did you think that was wrong at the beginning?
No, at the beginning, you're, you know, absolutely correct, Scott. I took that medication to go back to work fast. It was a learned behavior as I went along that, you know, this medication not only helped me physically, but little did I know it was helping me emotionally, because I wasn't dealing with anything that I was going through prior to it. You know what I mean? And I had thought, wow, I feel great. You know, I'm sleeping at night. I'm not having these flashbacks of stuff that I saw in the job. I can able to not get as heated up in discussions with my wife about the hours that I work or anything else. And then I had 2 young kids at the time too, where, you know, I didn't have a nanny. You know, we don't make a ton of money. I was shift work. She worked during the day. I worked at night. I took care of them all day. I was tired. On top of all the other stuff that I was dealing with.
Well, most of the guys have to do details, and that's where they work extra jobs when they're not working their regular shift, and they just to make ends meet. People don't realize what police officers. Now, listen, I was a drug dealer. I did all these nefarious things and all that stuff. So
he was around a lot of police, just for different reasons.
For different reasons. And, you know, I always looked at the police like, you know, those guys, that's all, they don't, you know. I was so wrong. And these are the guys that, you know, they when you deal with people all day long that want to hurt you and lie to you, okay, and then you can't even make your bills, and you have to work, you know, so hard, and then you fight with your wife, and you bring the job home, and you distance yourself from other people, because, you know, you start looking at everybody as a criminal after a while, and maybe they might want to hurt you or lie to you, so you become like inward. You're not outward anymore. Now you're just an observer, and it just becomes worse and worse and worse and worse as you already know.
And I think you hit on it too, is you know, that's one of those jobs where, you know, you throw on a badge. It's almost like a lot of the first responder jobs that people look up to, or athletes out there, this and that. You learn very quickly, at least I did at the end, who were acquaintances and who were friends. I mean, there's a lot of people, I say it all the time. It doesn't matter what profession you're in or what you do or who you are. I mean, everyone wants to ride in the limo, right? Everyone's willing to ride in the limo. You learn very quickly when that limo has a flat tire, who's there to help you push. I mean, and that's for everyone. I mean, specifically with that job where you have a lot of people that want to be around you because you're the authority figure. They want to be a part of, whatever is going on because of, their thoughts,
The
their
status,
beliefs.
and
Yeah,
everything.
their status.
And then the political things that go on within the department is a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely.
So you get stressed from the job, you get stressed from home, you get stressed from so many things. So many different
And
things.
fast forward, through the story, that self-medication, obviously there's a lot in between that, but, it ended for me like it ends for anyone. They always say jails, institutions of death. It led for me resigning from my job, and everyone I knew. My whole identity was gone. Everyone I knew wasn't talking to me, not because they didn't like me, but because they knew something was going on and they needed to distance themselves from me to protect their own jobs. Not that but you got to understand that feeling of guilt, shame, feeling alone. My wife left me, emptied the bank accounts. My friends weren't talking to me because I surrounded myself with only law enforcement. I've never felt so alone in my life, and I got angry. And I came out and I was like, "Oh, I'll show you." For about the next 8 months, the only one I showed it was myself, and it was the worst time of my life. I was on every paper in the state of Massachusetts for nonviolent drug offenses, because now when I didn't have that medication, all that stuff that I was feeling on the inside came back tenfold. Like, I thought it was bad prior. When I didn't have something, there were times I was sticking my gun in my mouth 3 times a week. I just didn't have it in me to pull the trigger because I didn't think anything could ever get better. I was like on top of the papers everywhere I go. People knew me, for a lot of good things throughout my life, for accolades through athletics or law enforcement, this and that. And I found myself in a position where I felt like everyone was coming after me and not helping me.
Somebody, a regular person, if you will, who has an addiction problem or an alcohol problem or even mental health issues, we go deal with it, and our family knows and our circle of friends. But you're plastered on newspapers because you were a police officer.
Yes.
I can't imagine. I'm trying to put myself in those shoes of just that shame and guilt and that.
Well, not only that, what
Yeah.
people don't understand about law enforcement. I've been working with law enforcement for over 40 years. When I got into recovery and when I wasn't in recovery, believe it or not. Okay. And what they don't understand is that here you are, you have to make split second, decisions. And even if you're in the right with your decision, you can wind up in the wrong on the other side of the fence.
Right.
Okay. Internal affairs has to investigate if you get into certain situations, and if you protected yourself or somebody else and you shoot somebody, then they look at you and, could wind up in a bad position. So it's like really, really difficult especially today. Police officers are looked at like they're the enemy, and they're not. Okay.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the guys are on burnout, and unfortunately, and they don't talk about it.
That's why I'm so glad Joe does what he does when he travels to talk
Oh, yeah,
to the
but
police
tell us
officers
what you
and
do
first
now,
responders.
Joe.
Yeah.
Now that you're on the other end for all these years.
Well, a big piece is I'm a trainer in NLP, hypnotherapy, time techniques, EFT. I do coaching, but I wrote a book last year, a year and a half ago, called Badge Bars to Beyond. It was my full story from my perspective on what took place. It's not fully about addiction, because I believe addiction is a result of, it's the underlying issues of why we're using substances.
Yeah, that's only the tip of the iceberg.
First place. So a lot of it, the book was written for the bankrupt professional. It was work for a reluctant divorcee. It was written for anybody that's been publicly shamed and come back from that. And what I do is I share my story around the country, in the hopes that I can't change what happened to me, but maybe, somebody that is dying silently in the corner hear something of inspiration or hope that, I know I'm a low percentage. What I've been through as a law enforcement officer, going to prison as an ex-law enforcement officer, getting out and redefining my life and being able to assist people around the country with that story or resources for outpatient care, inpatient care, or even just an ear to talk to. I answer my phone for everyone and anybody because it means a lot to me because, like I said, everyone always asks me that question, well, do you regret what happened to you? And on a lot of levels, yes, I do, because I loved my job. I loved my life, but I also love who I am today. And I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't go through the stuff that I went through. Doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes. Doesn't mean that I don't have poor judgment sometimes, but it's taught me, and we talked about this prior to coming on, was one of the big things that, changed a lot of how I go through life is even during very tough times, and I still go through tough stuff. Life gets us all, is remembering what I've been through, and remembering that the fact that I got through it. It's that old saying, I'm corny with quotes, is so far right now with all of the stuff that's happened to me in my life, I've survived 100% of it.
That's
one way
right.
or another.
I always tell people, don't believe everything you think.
Right.
Okay.
For me, it's none of it. Don't believe anything.
And Joe, yourself, and all the stuff that I've been through, and Scott, and all of us, we want to become the best version of ourselves that God intended us to be, not what we created. And I believe by going through all the stuff that you've been through and I've been through and Scott's been through, I really believe that it was a good reason to. And I remember somebody interviewed me and they go, well, what would you change? I said, absolutely nothing.
Right.
Because where I am today is because of everything that I was before.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
I have to ask you, Joe, as a first responder, was more to the point, as a police officer, what was the key for you to let go of that shame and guilt that you felt so much of because of the papers and the attention and losing the position? Losing your uniform is a huge part for people when they lose their uniform.
Well, you're losing an identity.
You lose your identity,
yeah.
exactly. So what was the key for you to getting past that so you're no longer shameful and guilt-ridden?
I had to find purpose, Scott. That was the biggest thing. Purpose and self-forgiveness were the two biggest things that I had to find earlier on.
Right purpose.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like when you, as a first responder, and being who I was, that would, like you said, we make that our identity. We shouldn't, but it becomes our identity, and no job, I don't care what you do, should be anyone's identity. But it was. And I knew that job, I could never go back to doing that job. So I had to find a purpose on feeling good about myself and what I wanted to do with myself. But the first problem was that inner work. I went on an escapade of, personal reflection and rebuilding myself. And I did that through NLP. For me, I took it for my own personal use, but then I got hooked on it because I saw the changes that it had with me. So I started working with other people with it. And I saw the effect it could have with a lot of people around the country. But for me, it was purpose, and self-forgiveness and making amends for where I was wrong and doing the best to my ability of owning the stuff. It went from, instead of me pointing the finger at people, I pointed the finger at myself because there was power in that. I can't change anybody else. I can only change me. I can't control how John responds or what John does or how but I can control my response to his, and that's true power in that. It's hard, and I took one of the books I love, excuse me, more than anything is the the four agreements. The one thing in there that I do now is I try not to take anything personal. The hardest, it sounds like the easiest thing to do, but one of the hardest things to do. And I try to stay in that level, and I fall short sometimes, but I really try to own that because you never know what someone's going through.
Nobody does things perfect. If anybody does things perfect, let me know. I want to pray to them. The bottom line is that we do the best we can with what we have, but at least we're on the road in the right direction, or a good direction, or a more spiritual direction than on the other road where all the darkness is and all the everything. Look, life keeps showing up. Like I got kidney disease now, and then I had cancer, and then all kinds of things keep showing up just because I stopped doing drugs and alcohol. And a matter of fact, today I'm 40 years in recovery.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
And
anniversary.
yeah,
Wow! I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either, but I just found out.
Yeah, you
But-
get so many years, you just forget now.
But you know, and the reason why I do these podcasts is to bring people like Joe and other people that we have, and my story. We want people to have a life that I believe the Creator, whatever God is to you out there, that we should have. You know, look, the world is a crazy place, but there's a lot of good in it too. It's not just all bad, even though it may seem that way. So those of you who are watching this podcast, you know, remember, life changes, and it's up to you to make a change in the best you can, and that's all we can do.
John, I feel like we should help people out with something, because a lot of people watching this are not law enforcement, but they still feel that shame and guilt from
It doesn't matter,
from their family, from leaving their family,
Same stuff.
or turning their back, their communities, their friends. You still feel that trauma, right?
Same thing.
Because you came from a world where recovery was not a part of your world in any way.
Absolutely not.
So you had to. It's just a different.
They
level
told me to go to
possibly.
AA. I thought it was a tow truck company. I mean, I didn't understand. Whatever I got to go to a tow truck company for? What is wrong with you people? You know. So, you know, and I guess in ending, because we're ending, I guess.
We got about 5 minutes. We could wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, Joe, what's the name of your book?
It's called Badge Bars to Beyond.
And where is it?
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah. So you look it up, Joe Kelley, and that's Kelley.
That's correct.
Because I spelled it wrong for the first year I've known this guy, but I don't do it anymore because one day he broke my fingers. So no, I'm kidding.
So you can get Joe's book. You can get my book, The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. It's my life story also. It's just how to motivate people and that you can be successful no matter what happens to you in your life. And, you know, now I got back into the treatment business at JC's Recovery Center, which is a faith-based program.
Yep.
And a wellness program. So if anybody's interested, they can go to the website, jcsrecoverycenter.com. And
John, when you say that faith-based, I don't want people to think it's a religious program.
no, not religious.
Please explain the difference.
Not religious. Okay.
I'm not sure how appropriate that is, but
Spiritual.
What the hell?
Doesn't have to be religious.
So what is the difference when you're saying faith-based? If people think
It's
they're going
from
to
all different faiths. It's getting back into being spiritual. What is spirituality? It's different for a lot of people. For me, it's learn to be kind instead of right. Don't hurt yourself or anybody else. Help people less fortunate to you. Simple tenets to be a better human being and become the best version of yourself, to give back to society, not take.
Nice. So let's wrap up with a couple of statements very quickly. Holidays are coming. Okay. Now we'll start with you, Joe. Holidays are coming. There's a lot of people out there that really kind of connect with your story and their first responder, but they're so afraid of stepping forward. What do you want to tell them?
I mean, I say this, that, you know, it's a huge gift to be able to step forward. I can put my information out there. I'm a vault. Anyone that needs to talk, you know, I'm always willing to get on and assist in any which way I can. I'm a big quote guy, and I listen to it myself a lot, because we all go through stuff during the holiday seasons throughout the whole year. And I love the one that says, hey, if everything is going great in your life, don't worry, it can't last forever. And if everything is going south and you feel you're in a storm of hell or anything, don't worry, it can't last forever either. And it's really just keeping that one foot in front of the other. For me, I believe in faith. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God. And I know this, like I said earlier, I've survived 100% of the stuff that's happened to me. I'm still above ground. And as long as I have breath in my lungs, you know, they always say, how do you get out of yourself? By helping another human being, you know, and I believe in that very, very hardly. Is when I'm having a tough day, I try to find someone else that I can help, you know, because it makes me feel good and it's the right thing to do.
And John, people out there that are suffering through the holidays, and more importantly, the people who are in recovery during the holidays, who maybe they're in treatment or they're missing their families, or they think it's a hard thing to be in recovery during holidays. What do you want to tell them?
You know, everybody says about a hard time during the holidays because you don't have any money maybe to buy gifts, and you know you're in a bad place. And one of the things I suggest people learn to be kind instead of right.
Yeah.
Help people less fortunate than you. Get out of your own way. And I tell you, life changes that way. But if you stay in the problem, you're never going to get out of it. So you got to get into the solution. Even though you may not think there's a solution, reach out and ask somebody for help. There's no shame in that game. The shame is not to do that.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you need help over the holidays, or someone that you love is struggling, mental health, addictions, anything else, say something. We don't live in a world anymore where we can say, well, let's wait till after the holidays.
No.
The drugs out there, the things that are going on out there, you have to say something now. So they're mad at you this Christmas, but they'll be alive and happy with you next Christmas. So please.
The best gift you can give is the gift of recovery and wellness.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no better gift than that.
Joe, if somebody wants to reach out to you, can they call you, or what do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can call me 774-269-5143, or you can reach me at Joe at onebrother1sister.com.
That's the email, Joe at onebrother1sister.com, the phone number. And John, we want people to check out all the things that you're involved with, because
Go to my website. Go to my website.
Go to this website, johnjgiordano.com. That's the letter J, not J-A-Y. It's the letter J. johnjgiordano.com. Find out all the things he's doing. You can contact him through the website. You can also purchase his books, and of course, Joe's books as well on Amazon. For John Giordano and Joe Kelley, I'm Scott Jones. Thank you for joining us right here at Beat Your Addiction Podcast. Please be kind to each other and enjoy the holidays. We'll see you next time.
God bless you.